Hello and welcome to the special bonus episode of The Dairy Edge. Teagasc are running a weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also being made available as a podcast. On this week's webinar, Stuart Childs speaks to Grass10 advisor Joe Dunphy, who gives tips around the grazing plan for the remainder of the first rotation and decisions around when the farm is ready to move to the second rotation.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Today I'm joined by Joe Dunphy. Joe is working with the Grass10 team with John Maher and John Douglas and Micheál O'Leary. So we're back talking about the grass again. I know John Douglas was only on with us a fortnight ago, but things are moving on, and Joe is just going to give us a very brief, and when I say very brief, we won't be more than a half an hour today, in relation to how things are going grass-wise at the minute. And we'd say, I suppose, the common pitfalls that John was talking about 2 weeks ago are the risks that might be in front of people, given that the weather forecast is good for the next couple of days, and that the opportunity is there to get grass into cows. But we need to take a measured approach to it. So, Joe, you're going to tell us how it's important that we stick to the plan.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks a million, Stuart. And I suppose, that's the headline of this morning's chat. I suppose, it's to know the importance of sticking to the plan now as we move through into the latter part of March. As Stuart said, weather conditions are I suppose things are on the up in terms of hopefully growth rate's going to start moving a little bit now this week. And I suppose just, in terms of it'll be, farmers, if the way, evenings are good, we'll be tending to maybe, give full allocations to cows now over the next few weeks. But I suppose it's just important now to take stock of where things are and make a plan for the next few weeks to ensure that you have a good supply of grass for the start of the second rotation. As we, depending on where you are, maybe some people will be ready to go to second rotation as we move into the early few days of April. Some other people around the country would be, maybe 10, 12 to 15. So I suppose it's just to make a plan now to the start of the second rotation and stick to it. So I suppose, just a small few bits, just update there from Pasture Base Ireland figures there, that these are, I suppose, these are in the Grass10 newsletter every week. I suppose looking at there, we're probably looking at an average farm cover of in around 800 now this week, okay, and growth for I suppose for the last 7 days is somewhere in around 14. So I suppose we're after coming off the back of a wet week the previous week, so we've had no real huge growth rates yet so far. Some of the data from Elodie Ruel's grass growth prediction model here, you can see here on the right hand side of the screen, is predicting pretty much double growth rates essentially for the next week. So if we look down here, Clonakilty, I suppose, going to maybe go, predicted to grow into the 30s. And maybe farms around the country that are probably growing, 10, 12, maybe up the west, northwest, probably growing, into, maybe mid-20s this week. So things are on the up. But I suppose, just a slight word of caution. If we look at some of the data from Pasture Base, and this is for some 2020 figures here, Stuart, and we can see that average farm cover, we're coming off the back of a very, very wet February last year. Probably, I think, Patrick's Day, I know up the west was pretty much a washout. But if we look at some of the figures, there's probably about 130 kilos of dry matter per hectare more on farms last year as opposed to this year. Okay, we're maybe at 801. I suppose that's largely down to a lot of the grazing that was done in that early part of March. It's a lot of farmers moved through an awful lot of ground there for maybe the first 10 days or of our last few days of February and first 10 days of March. And I suppose, it was the correct decision at the time. But I suppose if we've taken from the bank back then in terms of grass, we have to, I suppose, be prepared, to give back now over the latter part of March. And I suppose just to do a quick calculation there, Stuart, as well, if we were to take, I suppose, that 130 kilos of dry matter of a difference, and I suppose we were to divide that, I suppose, by a stock rate of 2.5, that's given us around 52, I suppose, kilos of dry matter per cow, okay, of a difference in last year. And if we're maybe, if this farmer's allocating 8 or 9, kilos of grass at the minute, that's the difference of nearly, 6 days grass That's, was on the farm last year, but isn't on the farm in 2021, on the average farm in 2021. So it's something just to, I suppose that farmers have in the back of their mind that, last year things ran very smooth. After Paddy's Day, we got very little amounts of rain. So it's just, to be aware that, there's not as much grass on Irish farms now as we stand on Paddy's Day. And, we're not guaranteed maybe as good a weather as we were, we got last year. So it's just to make the calls come back to making that plan for the next number of weeks. And I suppose, Stuart, the key, the three key things that we're always looking at is, is using the pasture-based Ireland tools. And I suppose looking, where are you today? Okay, as a farmer, where are you today? We're kind of coming out of a busy period. Farmers were maybe only measuring, maybe measured at the start of February, maybe at the end of February. And, maybe they're, trying to, we're coming into a slightly quieter period now on farms. It's important that we get back every week to measuring grass. And I suppose when we measure grass every week, it helps we produce a weekly wedge. We know where we stand in terms of average farm cover. Okay, so our grass wedge. If we have a spring rotation planner done, it's updating the area grazed in that spring rotation planner, so we know where we are compared to our targets that we had set previously in the year. And I suppose if we have a grass budget done, as you can see down here in the bottom left, is the sample one. If we have a grass budget done where we have a plan and a target cover, and the actual farm cover that we bring in per week will be coming into that. So, I think the three of them really very well in tandem with each other. If we have all together, we could get a real picture of our farm on a weekly basis, and allows us then to plan for the next number of weeks. So I suppose, Stuart, back to what John was saying, it's important to, which boat are we in? Where am I today? And I suppose it come back to those three pasture-based Ireland tools. But I suppose am I on a drier farm, and am I on target or ahead of target? And again, look, as we said already about, farmers kind of grazed ahead. A lot of farmers on dry ground. I know February wasn't, that great. But people, seem to be, by the end of February, they'd kind of caught up a little bit. And in that first 10 days in February, people, grazed very aggressively, and maybe, grazed a slight bit ahead of target. So, if you grazed ahead, do I need to adjust our target, or do I need to slow down a little bit? Okay. And that's where the budget and I suppose the making a plan for the next few weeks in terms of a grazing plan, comes in. Heavy farms, I suppose, people on heavy soils that had, I suppose, have the correct attitude to going out. Some of them, that cold, dry weather there at the start of March, some of them made super progress, maybe getting 15, 20, 25% of their farm grazed in that time frame. So I suppose, and again, it's just, look, we'll have a bit on it there in a second, but it's important after last week's wet weather that, farmers on heavy soils just get back out going again, and, target some of the lighter covers on the farm to get back into it again. And then also, I suppose, there's people on drier farms who are behind target. So maybe what's the adjustment that they need to make as we move towards the start of the second round. So, I suppose no matter which farm you're on, which type of farm you're on, Stuart, the three checks are what's important to bring you through now until the start of the second rotation. So first of all, your average farm cover and your budget figures. Okay, figure out where your average farm cover is today. We're after coming out of a period where there's probably a lot of cows calving on farms. Correct some of the data on your pasture base account. Update cows that are in the herd. So you have, correct demand figures. And then obviously from putting in a weekly wedge, now we're going to have correct growth figures. So that's very, very important. First of all, establish where we are in terms of average farm cover. I suppose nextly, for farmers that are out early, we're not, I suppose, far away from the start of the second rotation. So I suppose, first of all, it's to make a plan from today to how you're going to get there. if people are up over 65 or 70% grazed, obviously the handbrake is going to have to come on. But I suppose it's just to do a calculation of where you think you're going to be roughly in terms of starting your second round. And I suppose this links in with point number 3 here. But say, for instance, I suppose look at point 2 there, acres left divided by days. So I suppose essentially we're trying to get an acres per day figure. Okay, so we do a weekly sum, and so that acres per day, we multiply it by 7. So we take that example. If I have 50 acres left to graze, and roughly 20 days now until the end of the first week of April. Okay, if we're starting the second round on the first, on the 5th, 6th, 7th of April. I suppose that will allow us roughly to graze about 2.85 acres per day, or 17 acres a week. And I suppose just there on that, Stuart, if you say to a farmer, try and stick to 2.5 acres per day, you'll nearly drive him mad, because there'll be days he's going into lighter covers and maybe days he's going into heavier covers, and it's hard to stick to that. But if you tell him, try and stick to 17 acres a week, roughly in around that ballpark, give him I suppose a figure for the week as opposed to a figure for the day, and allow them, that's a better figure to go by. I suppose then, Stuart, thirdly, the cover on the first graze paddocks, this is really the key, I suppose, deciding factor of when you're going to start your second rotation. So, our February graze paddocks, it's important to do a back calculation on it from where you need them to be. Okay, so I suppose if we're looking at what's left in March that we could potentially grow on them, we can probably look at maybe 15 days now, in March, at somewhere in around 25 kilos a day of growth. That's going to give us, roughly 400 kilos. We're going to get, if we're starting on the end of the first week of April, we're going to get another 7 days by probably somewhere in around 35 kilos of growth. So that's 250. So I suppose to have those first 3 or 4 paddocks on the farm, at 1,1200, 1,250, somewhere in around that figure, we're going to need 650 to 700 at the moment on those paddocks. So very, very important there, Stuart, to take a look at those first 4 paddocks on your farm. Your first one's grazed, the fields that are coming back the strongest. Take stock of what's on them, and I suppose that's going to lead you into, I suppose, your plan for starting your second rotation. Okay, I'm just going to share this video now, Stuart, if that's all right.
Yeah, so I suppose just a bit of background to the video. Joe Tomas has a lot of ground grazed already, and he's just going to be a little bit tight maybe at the minute. So he just had a quick chat with him last week about what his strategy was to make sure that he'll have enough grass when he starts again, then starts the second round in early to mid-April, or early April, around the 7th or 10th of April.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, Stuart, and look, he explains it fairly well in the video, but I suppose no more than that, his average farm cover is probably down around, it's down to around the 700 at the minute. And again, I suppose, look at on farms, a lot of people on farms are, coming up towards three livestock units per hectare of a stocking rate these days. A lot of cows calved early this year. A lot of people are, have calved 75% or 80% in February and into early March. So there's cows, it's very, very easy to run away with yourself at this time of the year. So I think, we just have a quick look at this video. It's only 2 minutes long, and look at it lead us into the rest of the presentation fairly nicely.
Hi, I'm Tomas O'Brien and I'm farming here near Mitchelstown, County Cork. I'm milking 120 cows on 93 acres. The opening farm cover in early February was over 900 kilograms per hectare. About 55% of the farm is grazed at the moment. The current average farm cover is 700 kilograms dry matter per hectare. Due to lower growth rates this spring and very high herd demand, the average farm cover is lower than where I would like it to be. With poor weather and difficult grazing conditions last week, I kept the cows in by night on high quality round bale silage and gave them grass by day for a few hours. This allowed me to slow down the amount of grass being eaten. My plan is to hold the average farm cover close to the current level for the next 10 days and let grass growth pick up. I will walk the farm every week and monitor grass supply. 40% of the farm has got slurry and the rest has got 60 units of nitrogen. The plan is to have 70 units of nitrogen out by late March. The paddock that I graze first in February has about 600 kilograms per hectare at the moment in mid-March. The level of grass in these paddocks will determine when I start my second rotation. I expect this to be around April 5th, but this will depend on grass growth. Currently, I am very happy with regrowths on the farm. The weather looks to be picking up, so I think I am on track for April 5th. I have 45 acres left, which will allow me to graze about 2 acres per day or 14 per week for the next 3 weeks. I use the grass budget tool on PastureBase to keep my farm on the right path. This tool tracks the grass growth and grass supply and gives me the true picture of my grazing plan. The average farm cover must not drop below 550 kilograms per hectare.
So that came across there well, Stuart, did it?
Yeah, it was perfect. Played fine, Joe, for me, and I hope he played it well for everyone. So I suppose one of the key figures that he's mentioned there, Joe, and I know I'm probably going to show it now in a second again, but is that 550 kgs there at the start of April. Like, I mean, we can't overstate that figure enough for people, because I've seen people in the past who drop below that, and it's just a disaster zone to be in early April in reality, because it just puts people into a tailspin, really, like.
Yeah, they just, as you said, Stuart, you just kind of, you can't get out of it, like, because you just don't have the cover of grass back on those, those first 4, 5, 6 paddocks on your farm, and you end up going into them probably, 5 or 6 days too early, and so look at it's, and we'll come across it every year, and look at it's it's awful hard. It's hard to do for farmers, because as the weather gets good now over the next 10 days, it's so easy to want to just leave them out at night and maybe, allocate, full grass and 3 or 4 kilos of meal in the parlour. But like, it's hugely important to get this next 10 days, 2 weeks right. And, I suppose if we keep our average farm cover to 550, 600, what allows us to do is going to make our April so much easier, but it's also going to, allow us maybe to close up more ground for silage, because we're going to have more grass on the farm to sustain that second rotation. So, so it's as you said, it can't be, stated enough how important keeping above 550 is.
And the other thing, I suppose, Joe, is like, hope isn't a strategy, but we're all guilty of it. We're looking at this week now and hoping that the growth rate, and we see all of these figures saying growth rate at 35, and your earlier slide showing a potential growth rate at 25. So we're saying, oh, right, we're ahead of a small bit. We hope for the best that it will work out. Like, but it's the law of averages will generally prove right in the end of the day, and we just need to, like Donald has been on there before a couple of weeks ago as well, and he feed the silage in March, don't be feeding it in April. And like you said, the temptation is there now to just open the gap and leave them off. But maybe we need to bring in that bit of silage now, just to keep control of things, and that'll make for an easier April then, rather than the kind of a stop-start scenario. Like. Yeah,
no, 100%. That's. It's going to, as you said, the next 10 days are crucial. So we'll look at, a strategy or two there in a second, and we'll look at maybe for people who have lower proportions of the farm graze as well. But I suppose, look, just to summarize that video, and, I suppose there's 7 or 8 key points there, and I suppose they're all important. Is just look at the next 10 days. If you're in around 700, and you have a big demand on farm, like, I would be slightly worried in terms of, I would like to be making a plan for the next, next couple of weeks. So I have to reduce the amount of grass being fed. So we're going to have to put silage and meal in. I suppose the key thing there is to hold the average farm cover for the next 10 days. I suppose that comes back to matching our demand and our growth rate on farm. Walking the farm weekly, it's absolutely critical. Stuart, just to keep on top of where things are, and it allows us to, a week a week to say of slow growth now, and someone grazing full tilt could take 150 off an average farm cover, which could bring you from, say, 750, or 700, down to 550, and you're still a week or 10 days to go to to get to the 1st of April, not even into, the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th of April. So what weekly, walking the farm weekly from now on is essential. We have some of the targets for in terms of fertilizer and slurry there in a minute, but ensure that the adequate levels of fertilizer and slurry are applied on your farm for your given stocking rate. The monitoring the regrowth on the earliest paddocks. So I suppose where we need them at 650, 700 today if we're starting on the into the the middle of the first week of April. They just have to be, in terms of if they're not, we're just going to have to push out, and I suppose that's the reality of it. Adjust the start of the second rotation if necessary, push it out, and I suppose that's going to come into making that plan for what grass you have left on your farm. And if it means you having to put cows in at night, putting cows in at night, even though the weather is nice, it's it's not something we want to do, but it's the best decision for your farm for getting April right. And I suppose look at stretching out the area left to graze and completing and updating the grass budget weekly. And I suppose the grass budget, if people are familiar with it, it just really helps to keep people on track. So I look at Stuart, I just want to run through one or two things there in terms of maybe feed and silage. And people say maybe we're a bit short of feed space, or they might come up with why silage can't be fed as opposed to why silage can be fed. And look at it, just running through a couple of figures there. If my grass budget tells me I need to feed 2 kilos of silage per day now, just to slow things down, what ways can we go about that? So I suppose look at 100 cows on the farm by 2 kilos is, I suppose 200 kilos of dry matter, or probably just somewhere in around the equivalent of a bale a day. So I suppose what way can we do it? Do all cows need to eat 2 kilos? Not really. I suppose if that can be achieved by maybe leaving cows access to the barrier AM and PM, maybe holding a bunch back in the morning and the evening to make sure that bale is eaten, or maybe that can be achieved that someone will decide to leave maybe 40 cows in at night and eating 5 kilos. That's going to get that 200 kilos of dry matter eaten either. So there's what I said. There's many ways of skinning a cat, but it's I suppose it's important just to stick to the plan, making that plan. And if it says I need to feed 2, 3, 4 kilos of silage for the next, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, stick to the plan and work with whatever facilities you have on your in your yard. Okay, so. And just on that as well there, I suppose getting that balance, as we said there, Stuart, in terms of the balance between growth and demand is really where the whole thing is run is won and lost. And I suppose if I might just put in a slide here, Stuart, if that's okay, just to explain it. If we've got a farm cover of 700 today, and I'm, maybe say allocating 10 kilos of grass.
We're still on the slide now. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Perfect.
If we're allocating 10 kilos of grass per cow, and we're stocked at, 3 cows per hectare, that's going to give us a demand of 30. Okay. So if we only grow 20 next week, so if we grow 20, where there's a shortfall of 10 every day. Okay, so we multiply our 10 of a shortfall by our 7 days. So it's going to take. So our average farm cover next week is going to be 630. Okay, so just to make people aware of how I suppose where does this I suppose this link between growth and demand, where does this come in? Okay, so. If you're at 600 today, Stuart, or you're at 650, or 700, I would be saying we need to match growth to demand for the next week. So if you think your farm is going to roughly grow maybe 20, 25, for the next week, that's where I'd be pitching my demand. Okay. So for that farm, that might be, 8 kilos of grass, which is 8 by 3 is 24. Okay. So that's 24 kilos of growth. So, just to keep average farm cover there. So, and then fill in the balance of the diet with meal and silage. So probably in that scenario there, Stuart, that farmer is probably, going to have to leave animals in at night just to, because if they're left out at night, they mightn't be able to get enough grass, they mightn't be able to get enough silage in that way. But I suppose it's just to to get that link between growth and demand, work it out for your farm, and make that plan for the next couple of weeks. Is that all right, Stuart?
Yeah, Joe, yeah. I suppose, again, the other thing that people have to bear in mind is that, like Tomas said there, that he's planning to start the second round around the 5th of April. And you said about maybe people having to push out the start of that second round. It may only be 3, 4, 5 days at most, because you're going to be coming into kind of 40 growth rates. Hopefully, the 10-year averages would suggest that 40 should be in or around what we'd be expecting in the early days of April, which means that you're going to add the 200 onto the farm very quickly. So the game isn't lost, but it's just to make sure that there's a plan to get to the finish line at the right stages, and that you don't collapse before you get to the finish line, basically.
Yes, yeah. And I suppose, look, at if we get a massive week, or we're seeing a massive week or 10 days, it's very easy to, let down the handbrake as we maybe the 26, 27, 28. Like if we're, if our average farm cover is still at 700, or it's like, maybe at 650 or something like that. Like it's great to be, it'd be great to be in that position, like, or 600, we can reduce the meal, and we can and things can quicken up that way. But I prefer to be in that scenario than below at 500 or at 480, where we find an awful lot of people year in, year out, and then you come back to them 3 weeks later and there's still silage and meal going in, and they're trying to take out silage ground, and it's made April so much more expensive on the farm.
That's all for this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar series. And don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with our usual Dairy Edge interview on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and thanks for listening.